one of the probably landmark things in Indiana as we looked at it, some of our early leaders did place their sons and daughters in institution because they were very severely disabled. There were no services at home. And so it's always been an interesting issue for me that at time we had over 3,000 people living in institutions in Indiana, approaching 3,500 probably at our top. And it was in 1998, we were doing the 317 plan. We had a terrible situation on Newcastle State Hospital. Kathy Davis was the secretary, and we went over, and there's hidden video taken by a brave young woman who, interestingly, got fired, lost her job, found difficulty working in the field again, but she'd shown people being beaten, duct taped to chairs, horrible situations.
Of people with developmental disabilities being made to sit in chairs, hit over the head with clipboards, spoken to rudely and cursed at, and all of the things that you can believe when you're told happen in institutions, but you don't want to think about it or believe it, but then you see it. That appeared on the 6 o'clock news one night, and the disability community, the advocacy community, and the community at large was offended that this was happening to Indiana citizens with developmental disabilities, probably daily, only never witnessed by anyone outside.
And Governor O'Bannon called me up and called Kathy Davis, and he said, "John, I don't think we can fix it. Can we get this closed?" And I said, "Yes, we can do it if we do it the right way, and we do it in a person-centered way, but we just don't move them to another institution."
Indiana and the citizens of Indiana have really been fortunate to have people that were willing to work together and try to solve problems and make things better for individuals. Was it always perfect? Did we always agree? No, but we had some great leaders. I would have to put Kathy Davis at very high, if not at the top of the list. She was the FSSA secretary, and during her time, she not only advocated for what we call the 317 plan to very definitively define what our principles, values would be in serving individuals, but she actually chaired the monthly meeting with a group of volunteers every month to bring that position paper together. I mean, that was a tremendous change in how it solidified. Everybody was to work together to follow that 317 plan. And that coincided with the downsizing and closure of Newcastle State Hospital. So virtually everybody who left Newcastle State Developmental Center followed those new principles and values.
She did such a wonderful job of bringing those groups together, people talking about what should happen in the future for people with developmental disabilities. She had people from the institution there that talked about their view of seeing individuals be able to evolve and start going into the community. Certainly there was a lot of fear expressed by them that they had a difficult time imagining many of the individuals being able to survive in the community, being accepted in and being able to live in the community. But she did a nice job of organizing that conversation and having people share that information. And I think we all learned a lot from each other through that process. And that was probably to me, one of the most significant steps in the history of our field in Indiana was that 317 task force and in putting some blueprints in place for what the future of services should look like.
Now, the mildly humorous story of someone being asked, why was it called the 317 Commission? And someone saying, well, because that's the area code for Indianapolis. It was simply a coincidence. It's the 317 Commission, named after the numbering of the legislation. So that commission of people with disabilities, family members, professionals, practitioners, and government people were charted to put together a new path. And that path essentially started us down the path of person-centered planning, or at least more person-centered practices, and down the path of saying maybe Indiana doesn't need its state institutions anymore. And while that may have happened, or it may have started anyhow, it was the tragedy of the videotape on the evening news that prompted the gears to start moving, that resulted in the 317 Commission, that started the conversation about what do we want in the future that's 10 and 20 and 25 years out. And I think a lot of the things around more person-centered services, certainly the closing of the institutions, the expansion of community-based services for people across Indiana, you can pretty much mark that as the beginning of that chapter. And it started with that 317 Commission. I was pleased to be a part of that 317 Commission in the late 90s, and I think that was a really important moment in Indiana's history.